Welcome to the Victorious Living Podcast. You're about to hear real stories of real people who have discovered the real hope of Jesus Christ. I'm Christy Overton Johnson, the founder and publisher of Victorious Living magazine. Since 2011, I've had the privilege of sharing the most amazing life stories. I never cease to be amazed at the life-transforming power of Jesus Christ. Today in our podcast, you're going to go deeper into these amazing God stories and hear from those who have overcome incredible odds and discover how they found a life of freedom. You can discover it too. I trust that you'll enjoy today's conversation between our host and our special guest. Thank you for listening, and be sure to share the hope you hear and the mission of Victorious Living.
This is Randy Claypool with Victorious Living. I am honored to have Mark Corbett and Stephen Watt with me today. If you've been following our podcast, you'll know that we've had a part one and a part two. We've had a separate interviews with Steve and Mark. Today, I wanted to bring them together, and I wanted to ask them questions, and just so we could all just get a feel for what it was like to travel what these guys have traveled together. Now, your story together goes back well over 40 years, right? I mean, we're talking 40, 44 years or thereabouts?
43.
43?
Yep.
You met on a highway that Mark was sharing with me doesn't have a lot of traffic.
Yeah. Very little traffic.
Mark had robbed a bank. Steve, you were in your highway patrolman car, and it had come over the radio that there had been a bank robbery. And you pulled Mark over simply to ask him if he had seen the car that was being reported as being driven by the bank robber.
That's right.
And wow, what a surprise. So shots ring out. Mark gets out, shoots Steve, and there was some shooting back and forth. Anyway, we know the story where it ended up. Gosh, so much could be said. Where I want to begin today, Mark, you were found guilty. You were sent to prison. 40 years and 11 months you spent in prison. Steve, here you are all these years later. And as I had you do the other day when I was interviewing, if you tilt your head forward, you can see Steve is missing an eye as a result of this experience together. Now, Steve, question to you. I understand that at some point, not long after Mark was incarcerated, he sent you a note. Do you recall
Steve,
that?
I was telling him about in the county jail. I said, I don't know if Steve remembers. I sent you a note saying I was sorry I shot you. Do you remember that, Steve?
Yes, I do.
Because we don't.
Knowing how angry you were, what was your reaction?
I didn't read it. Gave it to my sergeant. Nothing he had to say didn't concern me. I didn't care. Hated him.
Yeah, see, I didn't know until I was talking to Mark that he had sent you a note, and wow.
I read the note. I read the note years later, after I forgave him, but I didn't read it at that point in time. I just gave it to my sergeant, and he stuck it in my personnel file.
Now, if I understand, Steve, you accepted Christ earlier. Something grabbed a hold of you because you were just messed up with, how did you describe yourself, what you were feeling, the anger, et cetera, et cetera?
Just so angry, bitter, hateful. There's nothing good in life.
And Mark, what were you feeling early on during this, after being in a county jail, then getting put in for 40 years, getting sentenced for 40 some years.
Was sentenced to life.
I see that I didn't know. So you got a life sentence.
At my request.
Okay.
That
was the missing caveat.
The judge wanted to give me a 20-year sentence, which I didn't know. The judge told Steve about that, and Steve would tell me about that years later. I found out in the county jail that from a guy that served time that lifers were doing less time than people with sentences of years. So I asked my attorney. He called the parole board. The parole board verified it. Lifers were doing an average of 12 years and or 9 years, 9 months, something like that. And people's sentences were doing an average of 12 years at that time, so, like a 20-year, 30 or 40. So my attorney then called the warden who he'd gone to college with, and he verified it. And my attorney advised me against taking a life sentence. I said, no, I want a life sentence because lifers are doing an average of 3 years less. And the politics would change. And it was a decision was not good. I might have been able to get out after serving 14 years instead of almost 41 if I just taken what the judge wanted to give me.
So you're incarcerated for a lot longer than you planned, and Steve is struggling. Tell us, Steve, some of your injuries that you had.
The very first bullet came through the windshield of my car, through my sunglasses, and hit me in the left eye. Broke out the back of my eye socket. The bullet stopped the thickness of a piece of paper from entering my brain. No bone fragments penetrated my brain. I have one bullet still in my spine, 1/16 of an inch from my spinal cord. One bullet hit me in the liver and missed the major blood vessel in my liver by 1/4 of an inch, which I would have bled out if it would have hit that vein. And then 2 bullets bounced around inside and ripped up my stomach, my intestines, caused all sorts of damage.
And Mark, Steve shot you in retaliation or in defense as you were fleeing, and so you were wounded too. Mark.
It was a minimal wound. Steve had a big gun, but that bullet went through the back of the seat. It was a 357, if I remember correctly. So the metal in the back seat greatly slowed it up, and I was hitting the back and the shoulder. I didn't hit any major organs. It didn't hit my eye. So compared to the wounds that Steve got, it was nothing.
So you're like thinking, wow, I got to bring this out again. If you can remember what you said to me, and that was something to the effect of when you got out of the car, you saw him as someone trying to stop you. You didn't see him as, and you gave a list of things. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. He was an obstacle in the way. I didn't see a human being. I didn't see a father, a son, a brother, a dad, a neighbor. All I saw was somebody in my way. And I think a great deal of criminal thinking looks at other people that way rather than humanizing them. I think if we humanize them, we can't do the things that we do.
So all of these years later, you start to communicate, and Mark's asked for forgiveness. Steve doesn't want to forgive him. So that was a journey for both of you. Where did it go from there?
What do you want?
Well, I'm just either one of you. I guess since you got something you want to say, you go first.
Ask me again.
So Mark sent you a note. You didn't read it.
Right.
But not only were you dealing with the disabilities, but you were pretty angry, hateful, miserable.
Yeah.
So you went and talked to a chaplain and trusted Christ.
And became a Christian.
So what were your options then to deal with the anger and hate?
I didn't see any options at that point in time. I was saved. I was a Christian. Um, my wife at that time asked me if I had forgiven Mark, and I said I had, and she called me a liar. And then I called the chaplain and said, I'm miserable. Why do I not have uh, the joy my wife has? She's reading the Bible, doing Bible studies, going to church, and I wasn't. And he said, have you forgiven the guy that shot you? And I said, of course I have. And he called me a liar. Month went by. I was still so miserable. I couldn't take it anymore. I was so unhappy, so sad. I called the chaplain and said, what do I do? And he said, why don't you write the man a letter and tell him what's going on in your life? And I had written an article, two articles. One was about the shooting and one was about accepting Christ. And I sent those articles and a letter to Mark. And the exact words of my letter were, Mark, I don't wish you pain by sending these to you, meaning those two articles. I just want to share my joy with you. If you haven't already, won't you join me in Christ's love and the Christian family? And the second I wrote that, God just lifted this burden of hate off me, and I experienced joy for the first time in my life.
So, Mark, you're in the county prison before being sentenced, and you send him a note saying you were sorry. Did you expect or hope to get a response to that?
I don't think so. I just felt compelled to reach out and tell him that I was sorry for the pain I brought into his life. And no, I don't think I expected a response.
Let's talk about that for just a moment. Do you think it's human nature when we've done somebody wrong? I mean, I guess in that situation, maybe, I mean, were you doing it for him, or were you doing it for your own self? Not in a selfish way, but I need to say I'm sorry to this guy. And so you didn't expect him to respond, but did it make you feel better? Was that some motive behind it?
Of course, I think the motive is I wanted to, if possible, and I had no idea the extent of the impact I had on him, but if possible, to lessen the impact. And also, when we've done bad, we know we feel better when we say we're sorry. And
Did you, at what point did you learn that Steve had survived?
I knew right away. Uh, I mean, we were in the same operating room together.
Oh, wow.
But
Emergency room.
thank you.
Yes.
Emergency room. Thank you. But I don't know, 8 feet away. It wasn't very far. And they were working on him, and he was in tremendous pain. And they were working on me, and I was in minor pain compared to him. And I knew he had survived at that point. And I think the jailers or somebody told me that he had survived. So I knew.
It's interesting. So you said you were sorry. Did it help you to have done that, Mark? To say you were sorry?
You know, I don't want to be cavalier or hardened, but it was a long, long, long time ago, and I don't know that I can go into my frame of mind sitting in the county jail when I did that 41 years ago. I felt compelled to write the note, and I'm sure it might have mitigated somewhat what I did, my feelings, but of course, I had no idea the impact that I had that I know today that I've had in Steve's life. I mean, it's much greater than I ever understood then.
Steve, when you wrote that letter then and tried to follow through after you'd kind of been called out that you hadn't really forgiven him, when you wrote that letter to truly forgive him, you said immediately once you sent it, you felt joy.
Yeah.
Did you get a response?
Oh, yeah. I got an 18-page letter from Mark.
18 pages. Well, Mark, I guess you had plenty of time to write that, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was kind of mean. 18 pages. What did you, well, I guess that was just, that's a lot of writing.
Yeah. 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 And I can't remember a lot of specifics that Mark wrote about, but he's a long letter writer, and I'm more like one page is pretty long for me. I'm more like a paragraph or two. um,
Mark
yeah,
was writing a book.
yeah, yeah. Mark always writes books. He never writes notes or.
Mark, what did it feel like after? I don't know, how was it, 4 or 5 years or that passed between when you said you were sorry? Do you have any recollection of the time frame? It doesn't have to be exact. When Steve sent you that letter?
Of course, it was. I was overjoyed to get the letter, and I don't know if either one of it mentioned us mentioned in our article about Steve coming up to see me at the revival. The After we exchanged letters for a while, and then uh, Steve felt compelled to come up to the revival, and I think he should respond about why he came up, and then we can talk about what happened then.
So what you're about to tell us, you went to a revival inside the prison,
Inside the prison, yeah.
and this would be the first time that you had laid eyes on each other or been in each other's presence since the emergency room?
Yeah, yeah. Since we tried to kill each
So,
other. Oh.
so why'd you go?
I went again as an act of obedience to God. I'd written a second letter to Mark that I didn't want to write, which in the letter I said, these are the hardest words I've said to anyone outside of my family. I love you. And you want to know why? Because Christ first loved me. And I refused to write that letter, and God just crushed me. I had such a heavy burden. And when I wrote that letter, he lifted the burden. Well, then the Christian revival comes around, and I knew God wanted me to go. A pastor friend had called me and said, "You can go with me," and I said, "No, I don't want to go." And God just crushed me again. And when I called the pastor friend immediately and said, "I'll go." I'm smart enough to figure out that God's going to keep me miserable until I agree to do what He wants me to. And so I went to the Christian revival because that's what God was commanded me to do. To go there, I knew I was going to be witnessing to Mark because that's what God wants me to do.
And for our viewers, that's Sam, the dog.
Yeah.
And somebody gave him to you, and he's there. He's trying to comfort you right now because he senses any kind of reaction. You were sharing with me the other day when we were talking that he's just trying to keep you calm, and
He
he's not camera shy. So
He senses a great joy in my mind right at the moment. He knows that I'm very, very happy, and I'm above the normal line. My brain is above normal, and he's trying to get my brain down to normal, which that's what he's trying to do.
so Mark, what did you when he showed up? What was your reaction when he showed up at that revival meeting inside the prison?
Well, I can understand why you asked that question, but I think Steve's got a little bit more to add about what was going through his head when he went to meet me at the revival. I think that's an interesting thought.
Oh, so okay, you're being asked to expound more on that, Steve. What was really going through your head?
I saw Mark across the gym floor, and he approached me, and I approached him, and he stuck out his hand to shake hands with me, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't reach out and take his hand. Um, I threw my arms around him and I hugged him and I said, "God, I'm glad I didn't kill you." And he said, "I'm glad I didn't kill you." And I'm still, my brain still operates as a law enforcement officer. And I thought to myself, "I bet you are, sucker. You'd be on death row if you'd killed me." And then I thought, I had my arms around him, hugging him, and I thought, I can kill him. I know how to do this. With my hands, I could kill him. And I turned loose, and I went, "No, no, 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 no. I don't think that anymore." And then we started talking.
Okay, Mark, your turn. So what was going through your mind? I mean, what were you feeling? Do you remember? I mean, can you expound on that?
I was delighted to get to spend some time with him. Uh, I sense of peace, a sense of gratitude that he reached out to me. Um, I don't know in the articles. I haven't read the article yet that Steve wrote, or can't remember everything I wrote. But Steve would go on to bring his family at times to visit me in the prison, and we wrote a lot of letters and came to 16 parole board hearings advocating for my release. And it's been a lengthy relationship, and it's what I've been very, very grateful for.
Mm. So I'm asking questions and I'm sitting here listening to your answers very organically. None of this conversation is planned. You know, just for our viewers to understand, I just really wanted to get the two of you together. And I just said, let me ask questions and then let's just share. Because what I really am trying to bring out, which you are doing a good job of, and that is the whole thing that people deal with. This world is so angry, and I don't want to get into politics and that, but it's just the hate for law enforcement, the and then often too the disdain for people who've committed crime, you know, getting whether or not they should get another chance to live for the Lord. And then we come right down to the point of to forgive and be forgiven. You know, this is
Okay,
just huge. Go ahead, Mark. I can see
I'd
it
like to
building
address
up.
that. Forgiveness is not for the person you're forgiving as much as it is for yourself. It's
Right.
to put down that burden. Steve told me one time, uh, over the years, Steve's had to re-forgive me sometimes because it's been an ongoing battle. He's lost count of the times he's had operations from the scar tissue and the bullets and he's always in pain. And he was going through a struggle one time of forgiving me. And he said he came and told me, he asked me to forgive him. I said, well, what do I have to possibly forgive you for? He said, for my unforgiveness. And he told me about how he had this unforgiveness going through this period. And it was like a knapsack that he had on his back. And he kept putting rocks in the back of this knapsack. And it got heavier and heavier and heavier. And then he made a decision to put it down. And he had to release again uh, from the bitterness and the anger. And when we don't forgive people, the biggest person harmed is ourselves, and it also harms the relationships of with us of the people around us, our family, our friends, our jobs, because that anger and that bitterness can't help but spill out into other places.
Right.
And it's huge. And I know on a minor level, there's been some times where I've had trouble forgiving somebody, and I'll end up forgiving them, and there's this sense of release. I can be around them. I don't have to be uncomfortable. I don't have all this duplicity or the bad thoughts in my head. I can just be at peace. So forgiveness is it's for the person forgiving even more than it is the person being forgiven. And I wanted to share a story. I was down in Colorado. Wyoming sent us, no, it was Oklahoma, sent us out of state, and I went to 4 different prisons because we were overcrowded for a while. And I was down in Oklahoma in a private prison, and they had inmates from Colorado, California, Vermont, and Wyoming there. And I was sharing the testimony of how Steve forgave me and how he had fought to get me out and all the damage I'd done to him. And so I shared my testimony in church, which I used to do about once every 6 months. And a month or two went by, and a guy comes up to me on the yard. It's an inmate, and he said, I want to thank you. And I said, for what? I didn't know who he was. And he said, when you shared your testimony, he said, I was able to forgive my father. And I don't know what his father did. He said, for 10 years, I haven't talked to my dad. When he writes letters, I just tear them up. I throw them away. I won't let him visit me. After I heard about Steve forgiving you, I reached out to my dad, and now my dad and I have reconciled. My dad visits me, and we write, and he calls me. I want to thank you for sharing that testimony. And I want to share another story. My dad was in law enforcement, He was a peace officer in the Sioux Falls Police Department for 16 years, and he went on to work for the U.S. Marshals doing security in the banks. And when I shot Steve, now I didn't grow up with my father, so I didn't have a close relationship with him. We knew each other were because my parents got divorced when I was young. But I had a relationship, but it wasn't close. When I shot Steve, I'd sent letters to my dad, and I'd sent Father's Day cards and Christmas cards and birthday cards. And every one he got for 5 years, he tore up. People would ask him, "How's your son, Mark?" He says, "I don't have a son, Mark." Because the worst thing you can be to a cop is a cop shooter. That's worse than anything. And so my dad could not get past that unforgiveness. So Steve reached out. And well, first Steve asked, he says, can I write your dad? And when he found out what was going on, I said, yeah. So I gave him my dad's address, and Steve wrote him and said, I've forgiven Mark, perhaps you can too. Or words to that effect. And it melted my dad's heart. And my dad and I are very close today. In fact, the name I went to prison under was Farnham, and that was my stepfather's name. And I haven't seen him in 50 years. And I changed my name to Corbett, my birth father's name, because of how close we became. And Steve is good friends with my family. He talks to my dad. He talks to my sisters. He's visited with my family. But if Steve hadn't reached out to my father, even though he forgave me, there probably would be no reconciliation.
This story just keeps going and going and going, and I know our time is limited, but man, that's an aspect that's just amazing. So it's like I guess there's a domino effect.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I know. I told you the story about the inmate in Colorado and my dad, and there's been many others, and we don't know all of them that we've impacted. We don't know. So that's one of the things Steve really likes to share the gospel, because we just don't know the seeds that we've planted.
Take a moment, guys, and what kind of message beyond what we have shared, what you have shared, what kind of message do you want to leave as a result of this interview together, as a result of your lives together? I mean, you guys, you're not just acquaintances. This has brought you together in a deep bonding friendship.
I just the other day, well, you tell him what I said to you, Mark, just the other day. Go down, Sammy.
I'm not sure. What did you say? I'm sorry. I'm being obtuse. I'm sorry.
You're definitely obtuse. When I said to you, you're not just my friend, you're my brother.
Yes. I didn't know what you're referring to, because we've had several conversations. Thank you. Yes.
So, I mean, you guys, you've hung out together and cooked out together, done things together.
Well, here's a quickie, and I know you're almost out of time. No, we don't have time for this story. It's way too long. All right. Anyway, yeah, we're very good friends, more than friends, and it's an extraordinary relationship, and it would not have been possible without Christ. Without Christ, Steve could not have forgiven me, and my life changed immeasurably because of Steve's forgiveness of me, and because of Christ in my life. And I urge anyone that's listening to this podcast, if they haven't accepted Jesus Christ, to do so today. Pick up the Bible, get into the Word, and get the peace it's brought Steve and I.
Yeah, that couldn't have said it better, Mark. That was great.
Thanks.
Grace is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what the song says. Amazing grace.
And wow. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for being so open. Thank you for sharing just this journey. It's impactful. I mean, it would be impactful if it was over 1 or 2 years, but the fact that this story has been going on for over 40 years and you guys still keep writing and that story, and you keep sharing and you keep building upon it. It wasn't just words. It wasn't just, okay, I'll do this because I feel like I have to. You've have developed a meaningful brotherhood, a relationship. And these are two guys that shot each other, hurt each other, one with the law behind him, one, it's just such an amazing story. Thank you. Thank you for being real. Thank you for doing what you've done and living the life that you're living. And thank you for putting that message of forgiveness, forgive and be forgiven, out there to our listeners. Thanks,
And
Mark Corbett and Steve Watt.
one last thing I'd like to say,
I knew
Rick.
that was going to happen. I knew,
Yeah,
didn't you,
I'm
Mark? I
sorry.
could tell. He had to say something
Yeah.
more. Go right ahead.
I've had people get very angry at me and say, "You're saying I should be friends with the man that raped me." I'm not saying that. I'm saying forgiveness is for everybody. The friendship that Mark and I have is solely because that's what God required of me to do, is to become friends with Mark. I don't suggest or think that everybody who's had something bad done to him needs to be friends with the person that harmed them. I
I,
did it
I'm
because
I'm
that's
glad you
what God,
made that point. That's extremely valid. We're not
yeah,
encouraging you to go out and just,
and
it's
become friends with
like
them.
Mark said earlier, the forgiveness part is some of, okay, so maybe I'm going to forgive a person to try to let it go and not let it just build up bitterness and anger in me for the rest of my life. So that's a good message. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and that's the last thing I'll say.
I bet I could get something more out of you, Steve. Hey guys, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Thank you,
Sam,
Randy.
take care of Sam.
Yep.
Really, I appreciate this so much, and God bless you guys. And don't ever quit. Just keep on going and living for the Lord. Thank you so much. I wish for God to bless you in your lives.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Bless you. And bless you, Steve.
You
Amen.
too,
Bye-bye.
Mark. We'll see.
Thank you for watching our broadcast. Are you an incarcerated brother or sister who needs encouragement? Write to us at Victorious Living Correspondence, P.O. Box 2751, Greenville, North Carolina 27836, or email us at hope@vlmag.org. To view Victorious Living magazine in its entirety, please have your chaplain contact us at 352-478-2098 or email us through our website at vlmag.org. We are happy to provide our Victorious Living magazine free of charge in bulk with or without staples.